Hey Mark, how are you today?
I'm great, and how about yourself?
Doing well, thanks.
Good, good.
Thanks so much for joining me today and kind of putting some time aside to have this conversation. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about some of the challenges that you guys are facing. But before we begin, maybe you can just do a quick introduction of yourself and Downtown Yonge BIA and kind of what your mandate has been so far as an organization, what you do for the area, and then we can kind of go from there.
Okay, so my name is Mark Garner. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Downtown Yonge Business Improvement Area. Our area of stewardship is basically from Richmond Street to Grosvenor Street, which is a couple of blocks north of Carleton and College. We manage the area from Bay Street over to Church. And basically, we are a business improvement area. We're responsible for maintaining municipal lands. Our area responsibility does a lot of event planning. We approve a lot of the development that comes into the area. We have a public realm strategy, laneway strategy. We have a music strategy. Again, trying to make sure that downtown Yonge is a vibrant and great neighborhood to live, work, play, learn, and shop.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you guys also do a certain level of research and kind of analytics reporting, I guess, on some of the activity in the area as well. Is that right?
Yeah, we're one of the only BIAs in Toronto that has street monitors, which basically is monitoring all the pedestrian counts and the vehicle counts, both active transportation and cars. On an annual basis, our neighborhood would see anywhere from 42 to 45 million people that walk north and south on Yonge Street. The Eaton Center would manage up to 50, 55 million people on an annual basis. We're the busiest intersection in Canada, if not one of the busiest intersections in North America. Yonge and Dundas at peak periods will see upwards of 238,000 people cross that intersection in one day.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
again, to your point or your question was, I'm lucky enough to have an economic development department within our organization, and we do a lot of statistical analysis. I happen to be a bit of a data geek myself, but also have an economic background. So we use data as the empirical evidence based on the decisions we need to make for the membership, the neighborhood, and all the, whether it's, activations, managing just the experiential, but
Hmm.
also advocating on behalf of the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Um, so actually, I'm just going to cut there for a second. There's a bit of an
Yep.
echo on your side. Do you
Okay.
do you hear that? I think it might be a volume thing.
Don't know. Let me just check my volume and
It's usually when I talk, I can hear the feedback a bit, so I just thought I would pause it just for the recording. Uh, Let me
I
just,
can turn it down a bit. Let's
yeah,
see.
tiny bit. I think it's good now. I don't hear it anymore.
Okay.
Okay, cool. We'll start again. We'll just pause for a minute and then. So you must have seen obviously some huge changes in the area right now with some of the social distancing policies that are going in place. Like, how is this all affecting your organization, but also just that area of Toronto, which is kind of a national landmark, really.
Well, as I would say to you, the same way my grandparents used to talk about the Depression, you're about to tell your grandchildren about this moment in time in history. I was able to and be in Toronto during the time of SARS. I don't think we could have anticipated the situation that we're in right now. And I think that's the struggle for all organizations, not just BIAs, but the city. You name an entity or a sector that is not impacted by this. We're having to think outside the box. I say there is no more box. We've got to sort of follow where this leads us. So the overall economic impact on the neighborhood has been substantial because, again, as the number one retail destination and tourist destination in Toronto, all of a sudden, that foot traffic, that 42 million a year, and with our street monitors, we've seen the drop off and how significant it was. And when we compile that data, it's going to be an interesting story to tell to not only Torontonians, but obviously to the city in the sort of recovery phase that's going to be coming out of this. It has been a dramatic change. When you see Yonge Street as a ghost town and very few people on the street, it's shocking.
Yeah.
So generational thing. This is something that we have never seen, and I hope we never see again. But we're all learning, what we need to do differently when it comes to trying to manage these areas and how we keep the economics going.
Yeah. So what are some of the areas that you're kind of exploring? Like, how do you continue representing an area that is not, there's no retail, I guess, happening there right now?
Yeah, the only thing, if you look at the hospitality industry in general,
Yeah.
that is the hardest hit. No
Yeah.
hotels, no restaurants. If you were lucky enough to have a restaurant that had a takeout or pickup service already in place, then you're making some money right now. It's not what you're used to, but at least it allows you to keep some people employed and generate some economics. If you were a sit down restaurant and didn't have takeout, well, then you've either had to try and figure out, am I going to open and provide a takeout service, or am I just going to close it? Again, with those different, that varying type of, retail entity and restaurants, how do you manage the quality of a steak that you get from a steakhouse? If you order it medium rare and then skip the dishes, by the time it gets to you, it's medium well.
Yeah.
So I think there's an evolution of the sector as well around that. But it has been very dramatic. It's, what we're doing to support our members is anybody that's open in the restaurants, we're encouraging, the neighborhood associations, reaching out to people that we know in the area to ensure that they're ordering meals. We do a lot of marketing and advertising around that. But I think one of the biggest lessons through all of this has been the amount of information we're all getting. When COVID-19, when we all started working at home, I was getting updates from my insurance company, the Arts Association, an endless list. And we made a very conscious decision as an organization to only communicate information to our membership from very reliable sources. So we do an e-blast weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, depending on the content. So it's not every Monday you get it. It's when content or information that you should be aware of. So that's how we're trying to, because everybody's just getting inundated. What do you read?
Oh, it's too much.
You could read nonstop, right?
Yeah, and you start to realize how many mailing lists you're on that you didn't know about before.
Yeah, and true enough, I'm off a bunch of mailing lists pretty quickly since
Yeah,
all
me
of this.
too. Yeah,
Because your inbox, you can't manage your inbox and all the information you're getting. So how are you going to engage? So, and that's another lesson we're learning from all this. In a normal world, I want to be connected to arts and culture as a key driver, economic driver for the downtown Yonge neighborhood. But right now, I've had to pick and choose. So I'm, working with the Canadian Live Music Association to understand what's happening with festivals and events, because that's part of our significant portfolio as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting space too, because a lot of that is, I mean, I've been seeing a lot of experimenting with kind of transitioning festivals and events online and trying to run online festivals and just using the digital space a little bit more during this time when everyone's kind of stuck at home, really.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point. I think it's very good based on, I don't think we've ever, there's work at home ethics, and a lot of people do work at home. But when we are a street-based organization. We're out with members, we're in the street every day, knocking on doors, saying hi to people. And now to be forced to do that remotely, knowing that our members are getting inundated themselves with phone calls, trying to get online to submit for the, various funding. So we've had to sort of rethink how we reach out to our members, or how do we specifically go after certain sectors each week.
Yeah, that comment you made about how do you communicate, I think has been a common theme that I'm hearing as well, because it changes the way you communicate, not only in your strategies when it comes to mailing lists and communicating about COVID-19, but also, what's appropriate from a sales standpoint in terms of communication, what's appropriate in advertising, what's appropriate in marketing. People have had to kind of pull even just the images that they're using in huge marketing campaigns that have already been committed to, because it just doesn't apply anymore in the current, the current new normal.
No, and that's the thing. What is the new norm? I think it's still evolving, but I would say I've been inundated by marketing companies over the last 3 to 4 weeks of, oh, you need to be doing this. Oh, you should be marketing this way. Again, it's, how is it evolving? Everybody wants to be sort of the expert or define the solution. The entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well, and there's people that want to be that entity, that savior. So where, again, it's like social media. Do I need to be in Twitter? Do I need to be on Facebook? Do I need to be on Instagram? Do I need to diversify so broadly, but not have the depth that I need? So do I have to be on all these different platforms? You've seen Tourism Toronto come out with some, so the To Go, so it's listing of all the restaurants that are open in Toronto that you can get, pick up, take out, or, to your house. So do we need to be there? There's other ones that are coming out daily now. How do we encourage our members of which ones they need to be on? And do you need to be on everything? Because you don't know which one's going to be the success.
Yeah. So has your kind of functional strategy turned more towards monitoring and communicating with your stakeholders in your kind of region? Because I would assume that like the experiential stuff is probably, it's either shifting online or it's not happening for the time being.
Right.
So kind of how has the business shifted for you?
Well, I think we're trying to find our ground, our lane to be in. And as I say, we took a very conscious decision very quickly in all of this, is to be that convener, communicator to our members. Make sure that they're getting sound information that they should be a part of. So we've gone to this communications side in a more digital way than we have in the past. Like I said, doing the e-blasts. Right now, it's, whatever non-essential businesses are closed, there's really not much I can do as an organization. So how do we support them? How do we ensure, have you submitted for your government funding, your provincial funding, your municipal funding? We're obviously advocating at a very high level. We've been part of the Mayor's Economic Impact Task Force, have a lot of meetings with, the City of Toronto. But also a lot of us, the core BIAs, the big 6 BIAs in downtown that are about 72 to 75% of the overall commercial tax base for Toronto, are meeting once a week. I meet with BIAs across an organization called IDA Canada. So I'm talking to people in Vancouver all the way to Charlottetown on what they're seeing and what everybody's trying to do, how to support their members, and sort of where are we going next. I think for us, the key is really starting to drive the recovery, what happens when we come out of this, and sort of bridge where we are now to where we need to be. Because right now, everybody's in what I would refer to as crisis management. The mayor's office, the city officials are just trying to keep the city functioning on a day-to-day basis. We need to step forward as organizations and start looking further afield as to what do we need to do? Where are we going to spend the very first dollar? When we get a dollar, where do we spend it? And what is that sort of cascading, priorities that we need to have?
What do you think the future looks like for your area?
And that's a good question. I mean, I had an interview this morning with City TV and they asked me the same thing. The quick answer is, who knows? Yeah. Right now we're all speculating as to what it could be. So you can do, I would say, when you start to see the calculations and you start to figure out, I think traditional retail will evolve again. I think the way people behave when we do have the opportunity to convene again, either in restaurants or public spaces, how do we do that? I think that's going to change. I'm hearing from, the music sector, festivals and events that, you may not be able to bring 15,000 people into a confined space again. So that's going to change. So really, who knows? It's you're just sort of taking it all in now and saying and dusting off what, I had mentioned SARS earlier. I was around for that. So I know what that was for the City of Toronto, but that was very focused to the City of Toronto against the world. We had to market to get people to come back to Toronto. So there was hotel specials, restaurant specials, and theater specials. But this COVID-19 is something that we've never dealt with before, and we're up against the world to then market how do we bring Toronto back. So I think we've got to change our mindset, and whatever we've done in the past, I'd say dust off and look at, but we need to be creative as to what is the change in sectors. You know, I'm not, because I'm responsible for a lot of downtown businesses and advocate for them and work for them. But I've become a very online savvy purchaser now, which is, you know, this might be part of the norm for me now. So
Yeah.
where did I get my dry goods and wet goods? How am I getting food in the house? So who knows what that evolution is? I would put out there that I think one of the biggest changes, and the fact that you and I are able to communicate versus what we used to do, is I would meet with you and your team on a specific project, but now communicating with somebody that I normally wouldn't have communication with. And it's showing me that I can work from home more. And I think this is one of the things that we should put on the radar is commercial space in downtowns. There's going to be a lot of vacancy, because I may have 15,000 square feet that I'm leasing currently, but if half of my workforce gets the opportunity from work from home, then I don't need that much space. So I'm expecting we're going to see an evolution in retail. I think, you know, sit-down restaurants are going to evolve. There was I would say, a significant saturation of restaurants in Toronto. So you're going to see the culling of those non-stable businesses or products that were not 100%. I expect we're going to see some high street retail vacancy increases in the very short term, but I think we're going to see commercial real estate vacancy rates increase as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think that's been a common thread amongst a lot of the discussions I've been having as well, is just kind of reevaluating what that commercial space looks like. It doesn't have to be, you know, not everyone doesn't have to be in the office. It could be transitioning to more of like a hoteling setup with collaborative workspaces, and people can kind of have their own home offices as well. It's just kind of interesting that these have been topics that we've been as a society, we've been talking about for so long, and this scenario we're in right now has just kind of put the gas on having to actually action a lot of that stuff and transition over to these new strategies. And the level of speed that we're moving in terms of new strategies, new implementations, new experiments, it's just like, it's unbelievable.
Right. Well, I think one of the recent stats, I may not quote it correctly, but what I heard today, there was over 1 million people that have applied for EI. And the last time the record was in 2008, 2009, but it was only a couple of 100,000 people that applied for EI. So even when we get back to post-COVID and this recovery phase, you may be going through this with your company. I would expect your company as a tech company, because I think there's going to be a lot of people coming saying, I now know I need to be online. I need to provide different service online. What I'm sensing is you're just not going to be able to flip the switch and 1 million people are going to be back working full time again.
Yeah.
We may have to divide the workforce and people work part-time to get everybody back gradually until all these sectors recover and the economics recover. So you might wind up working where you're laid off now, but you might get a 2-day, 3-day a week to share, because, you know, just in downtown Toronto, there's a restaurant link because that culinary sector has been very vocal. 69,000 people in downtown Toronto alone. You know, Oliver and Bonacini laid off 1,900 people. You know, the small independent would lay off maybe 35, 40 people. So, and there's these mom and pop restaurants that have laid off 10. Well, you're not going to be able to get them all back right away. So I think that is what I see as part of this bridge. I speak about this bridge to recovery, is that we're going to have to look at how we employ people again to gradually ramp up.
Yeah, I think I wonder if part of that is going to be extending some of the government benefit programs that they have to help. I mean, I think a lot of those programs are much needed, and I think a lot of those programs are going to be really useful in helping to bridge that gap, because at least it'll help to keep employment at a certain level, even within organizations where they might have needed to lay people off.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's going to be an extended program in order to get us back to that level where people can start being hired again on kind of a part-time basis?
And the quick answer is, unless we all stay home and flatten this curve, then the anticipated date to get back and start getting back to sort of, reality of post-COVID or prior to COVID, we'll have to look at these programs for extensions. However, where do we keep thinking this money's coming from?
Yeah.
And that was, I think, if you saw the Toronto Star article in regards to, the city of Toronto. COVID-19 is costing the city of Toronto $65 million a week just to stay operational. $65 million a week.
Wow.
Just to keep it operational. So there is a relief fund of about $739 million, where it comes from a combination of, 2019 surpluses that they didn't spend, monies that were in the 2020 budget, and other sources, investments, etc. But that number of 739 million at 65 million a week, we have till June 1st until the money is gone. So then the municipalities got to go to the province, they got to go to the federal government ask for additional cash. But we keep thinking there's this magic big pot of cash, and I don't think it's necessarily there. When you look at another statistic that's staggering, so you understand the state that the state that the city of Toronto is in. Every week, just on land transfer tax alone, the city would normally get $14 million a week. No sales of houses have gone through, so they've lost $14 million from land transfer tax. They're losing TTC revenue. So there's bigger issues when you start to see where the money that keeps the city running, where it's come from, and the economic impacts of all those things.
Yeah, and assuming that, we kind of start flattening the curve and coming out of this by June, the real serious impact on that side won't be felt as much. But what happens if, this goes into July, August? What happens down the road with all this debt that the government?
Yeah, and again, as we continue to advocate is, we've heard some of the financial institutions say, I'll give you 9 months reprieve, but we'll tack it on the end, right?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of advocacy work done to reduce the credit card interest rates. Those things are there. But yeah, to your point is, where does this end up when we come out of this? And again, you're starting to hear language. So I tend to be very close now to the language that I hear from the Prime Minister or the Premier or even Mayor Tory. You hear about the word surge. So the worst is not here yet. Mm-hmm. We're about to have a surge. That's why April is so critical, that everybody stays home so the surge doesn't impact us to the way that it could be impacting us. But you're also hearing about a second wave and third wave now. So that when we come out of this, if we start to go back to festivals and events, we're going to get another wave that, and recontaminate again. So, to look at it realistically, we could be in for a very long haul of working from home.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sorry, my phone's just ringing.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Let's pause for a minute.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
those are the things that you haven't thought about or you're not thinking about, right? Because everybody's so hopeful. I had, even on my own team, when I said we're going to start working from home, and everybody's like, well, okay, I can probably do it for a couple of weeks. Well, no, it could be, you could be into June working from home. So you find out pretty quickly the state of your home office.
I was just about to say the same thing, yeah.
The backdrops that you have in your house, right? Like I've got a bunkered office in the basement, but when I come up for podcasts and things like that, or panel discussions, it's in varying different places in my house.
Oh yeah, the lighting, the desk, your chair that you have, you realize what, you haven't invested in a good home office very quickly.
Yeah, exactly, right?
And then if you have more than one person home, it's like, okay, well, now you need more than one office space potentially.
How do you coexist?
Yeah, that's an interesting challenge. I think I mean, what kind of concerns me is the long-term economic impact, especially like you said, if we start draining all the kind of emergency funds that are being used. It's like, what happens with all that debt? How does the province recover that? I would assume it's through taxes and other sort of things that would be, revised down the road if need be. Um, is that kind of, you mentioned the task force that you're part of. What are these this kind of things that you guys are discussing and planning around, or is it mainly around business relief programs and stuff like that?
No, I think it's, being asked to be part of the mayor's economic impact task force it's sort of an immediate response. And
Yeah.
that's what I say, everybody's in sort of crisis management. But there's the immediate this month and next month. Then what do you do month 3 and month 4? But then where the group that I'm convening now or trying to be a part of is where are we post-COVID? So that while the mayor is dealing with all this specific issues right now in the crisis situation, when he comes out of this, he's got a report that says, this is where I need to spend money next.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you spend that first dollar? Now we are, just to go back to, I think one of your comments earlier was, we're a tax-based organization. We tax our membership. That's the way we exist. And what we've had to do as an organization is start to think, well, what if I don't tax my members for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years to help them to recover as well? Because we know as an organization, we're going to have to put we got to spend our way out of this. That's the shortest term answer on it. But, I've had to do the analysis and I've had to look at what do I have in the bank currently and how long, if I didn't get another drop of dollars from the members in the city, how long would I survive? And the answer is 2 years. I've got 2 years in the current form to run our organization doing the same services we are today. Mm-hmm. So you've had to start to look, how would we have to evolve? Do we go back to just a traditional beautification, BIA, doing festivals and events and marketing, and get out of the advocacy and some of the bigger projects we're working on for a period of time until the economics stabilize? Yeah. I think it behooves us all to, and I'm glad that you're doing these interviews across the sectors, because everybody's got to start looking at things differently, because we've never experienced this monumental situation we're all confronted with.
Yeah, and I think step one for a lot of organizations has been to figure out, how much cash flow or assets they have to sustain themselves over the next who knows how long. What's the worst case scenario, right?
Well, again, it's a good example. There's a lot of conversations. Well, we should be advocating for people to purchase gift cards for our restaurants, and I don't disagree. But right now, any of the people in the neighborhood, we don't know their own circumstances and situations. And I'm sure they're just trying to find a way to pay their rent and feed their family, much less, hey, get a steak from company A or do this, right? So we're trying to figure out how we invest whatever dollars we have more effectively and efficiently. All the events and festivals that we normally would have done up until June, we obviously have that money. So do we spend it now and start to stimulate something? Mm-hmm. But you almost want to know that you're going to come out of it so that you have the largest pot of dollars to be able to spend and really make an impact.
Yeah. What would you do to stimulate some activity this early in that stage anyways, when people are at home? Would it be more around marketing and just like trying to remind people to basically support that area, or is it, do you run online events? Like, how do you stimulate that kind of activity?
And again, don't have the answer. So again, there's so many people out there doing things. Which is the one thing? Tourism to go. It's good for, my small independent retail that have takeout. So we're in there with our small independent takeout. Now with sit-down restaurants that don't have takeout, how do I work with them? You're seeing things like, Wednesdays, starting next week is going to be share lunch together. Everybody is going to be able to watch, Jim Cuddy perform, and we're going to do takeout lunches. So us that, may still have money coming in should be still doing or creating that behavior, supporting those things. I think you're going to see crowdfunding initiatives come forward to help save your favorite restaurant. Those things will be there. But again, what I say, what is the amount of money truly needed? Providing a restaurant that their lease is $15,000 a month and you're able to generate $2,000 a month, is that going to help them at this moment in time? So the answer is don't know, but you got to look at all these other options to try and figure out what could happen and what could not happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of analytical analysis that needs to go on there.
It is
analytics. I really didn't think about that challenge. If someone's got a $15,000 a month lease, if you're generating, if 25% of that is that money well spent for that, or could it be put towards something that drives more change and more activity within the area?
Yeah, and that is the challenge, right? I've had other BIAs that were looking at, they have, they get a percentage of green P parking as part of their small downtown urban environment, and they want to dip into those funds now. And then the question is, well, how much are you going to provide an individual member? Every member is going to get $1,000. Well, it really doesn't do much with somebody, as we just talked about, that has a $7,000 a month or a $15,000 a month lease. It's just delaying the inevitable. So how do you work with the building owners and business owners to be able to figure that out? And then from that point, then figure out, do you spend now, or do we spend during the bridging phase, or do we save it all for when we come out of the post-COVID situation and spend as much money as we can?
Yeah.
And I don't know I don't know if there's a right or a wrong answer, other than trying to stay engaged, follow the data of what public health is telling us in regards to when we can convene. And then I think what's going to change for BIAs and just the community in general is you're not going to convene the way you used to convene. You're not going to put 8,000 people on Yonge-Dundas Square anymore. We're going to have to do smaller events, 200 to 500 people. We're going to have to keep this, the social distancing. You're going to have a new set of requirements with hand sanitization, all sorts of different things that you don't even know is coming to you yet. But that's the world we're about to face.
I think there's also going to be a really interesting opportunity to expand some of those physical experiences online as well. So you're kind of increasing the audience by also including the online communities as well. We're seeing quite a bit of that now, but I think, like you said before, as an individual, there are going to be a lot of personal changes that become permanent in your life. And one of them is probably going to be entertainment and kind of connecting with communities online instead of going in person. And in addition to that, that's probably going to be the new normal. We're not going to be congregating in huge amounts of groups of people. So I think
I think that's a big thing. I believe Rebecca on my team is in discussion with you guys, because I want to have an entire revised online presence in the way I never imagined. I want to put all my walking tours online. I want to produce content on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, because the biggest fear is you're going to have to go out and rediscover your neighborhood again. So I want to get ahead of that curve now, work with you guys to be able to develop new product, new content, and then disseminate it in different ways that we never considered before, based on this time with COVID-19 and this working from home or self-isolation. It's allow us to sort of discover the digital world in a different way. And it's interesting to see what people are doing. I've got a friend, Greg Godovitz, that's doing, the 2020 tour of Scarborough. And he talks about an album or a place that he played, which is great. So you're staying connected to the music sector and what was sort of legacy venues in Scarborough. We're talking about doing our walking tours. We're reaching out to you guys because I want to produce podcast or content. I think one of the things we wanted to do is then through our restaurants to support the hospitality and culinary sector is we want to do interviews. I want to interview Alan Liu from Salad King to understand his family's legacy and the importance of Salad King to Yonge Street, and then through that incent people to purchase from him that day, whoever can afford it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, all of this is really exciting stuff. Like I think across the board, it's really pushed that balance of, you know, physical versus digital way more towards the digital side, which is really making people think out of the box and kind of reevaluate what you can do and how you can bridge together all these different communities on and offline. And I think it's super exciting, and it's going to be an interesting change when we're kind of out of self-isolation, but it'll be really interesting to see how you bridge the digital and physical, because I think there's even more opportunity when you have a certain number of people in a physical place and you're also leveraging those audiences to expand the experience online as well. It's just like such an amazing combination.
No, it's true. And if you haven't bought Apple stock, buy Apple stock, because who survives through all of this is all the technology companies.
Yeah, I totally
because that is going to be the boom. That'll be the biggest part of the economic recovery from this is technology.
Yeah, and security as well.
And security, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that was great. I know you're a busy guy. You've got a lot of stuff going on, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think there's a lot of really exciting things going on. I think you have a super interesting perspective based on the role that you're in, and I think that a lot of people will find this conversation useful and super interesting. So, thank you again.
Not a problem. And thanks to the team. I know I'm pushing. I've got a call with Rebecca right after you and I finish our chat. And I'm coming to tennis to be able to figure out, how are you going to help me get out of this? And I think there's an opportunity, and I want to sort of stimulate that economy now to get further ahead in this digital world we're living in now and start producing content on a very quick basis. So.
Yeah, we're really excited. We've been talking about it already, and I know there's a couple things that are kind of in the works right now. So, we're really excited to get involved.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thanks for the time.
Thank you
Appreciate
so much.
It. And I'm glad that you're doing this series and talking across the sectors. It's good for you and good for the team for doing this. I think it's a part of the conversation that people need to have.
Totally.
And this is what I say is the new world of digital and media, and because it allows people to stimulate thought and get back to the creativity that we need to be able to get ourselves out of this.
Exactly. And I think, the positive out of all of this is that there is a lot of creativity going on, and there's a lot of experimentation, and there's a lot of solutioning and ideation around all these different challenges. And I think originally, I just thought that it would be really good for a lot of people to hear all these ideas, because as negative as the situation that we are in is, there is also a lot of positive happening, and there's a lot of really interesting changes and a lot of positive changes, I think. So that was just kind of the idea behind running interviews like this.
As my grandparents used to say to me, and this will be a tagline that you use as well, this too shall pass.
Exactly.
And we'll all get through this phase. And there'll be a new norm. What that new norm is going to be, just open your imagination, because we're about to create a different existence.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks for the time. Cheers. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.